Hare Krishna. Welcome back. We are resuming our Bhakti Shastri course. So today I thought of reviewing like first six chapters of Bhagavad Gita, which we have previously covered, but I felt like it would be too fast. Uh, so so what we'll do is we'll try to cover as much as possible, and if time permits, we'll go. I can be sure of two chapters, minimum two chapters we'll cover today. If time permits, then we'll go ahead and do the rest of the chapters also as much as we can. So here, so basically, as we discussed previously, Bhagavad Gita is both Shruti and Smriti. Bhagavad Gita is coming directly from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Shruti is the instructions that Shruti comprises of the Vedas, four Vedas, and from four Vedas comes Smriti. Shruti is means that knowledge, the Vedic knowledge, which is heard from the by the from the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the sages, and it was used as a standard, as a no to follow the lifestyle in the Vedic times. And Smriti means like the Puranas, Itihasas, everything comes under Smriti. Smriti is something like what you call law general, means like how the Vedic principles are applied in certain space and time, and then place and time, and then what results they got, like that. So it will be mostly like a implementation of Vedic injunctions. So Bhagavad Gita is Smriti because this Itihasas, Puranas, everything comes under Smriti, right? So uh, Bhagavad Gita is called Smriti because it comes in Mahabharat Bhishma Parva, and at the same time it is called Shruti because it is directly coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, and if we open the like Bhagavad Gita, the introduction, Bhagavad Gita starts with how Pandavas were cheated by Kauravas, and Pandavas were made to go for Aranyavas, and then successfully completed their exile, uh, and then comes back and then asks for their kingdom, and Duryodhana refuses to give back kingdom, and then there ensues a fight between Pandavas and Kauravas. Certain kings take up the side of Pandavas, and certain kings take up the side of Kauravas, and totally there are 18 Akshohinis. The personal count in the Vedic scenario is measured in terms of Akshohinis. So Pandavas have 7 Akshohinis and Kauravas have 11 Akshohinis, and that way the war started, and Pandavas fortunately got Krishna on their side, and Krishna agreed to be the chariot driver for Arjuna. So then after that, when the Kurukshetra war opens, like when Kurukshetra war is about to start, then this Sanjaya, the personal assistant of Dhritarashtra, he is narrating the war scene to Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra asks Sanjaya. So basically, this Bhagavad Gita starts. Dhritarashtra asks Sanjaya like what is the war scenario and everything, and there like Sanjaya explains how Arjuna wants to see the battle on other side and how he gets bewildered, and then Krishna, in order to motivate Arjuna to carry on his duties, he gives the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So this Bhagavad Gita, as we discussed, has three main sections. The first 6 chapters is one section, and and 7th to 12th chapter is another section, and 13th to 18th chapter is another section. So like basically a lot of many of the preachers they compare the this arrangement like like a king's entourage, how when a king goes out, out of his palace and or go out, king has to go anywhere in the kingdom, there will be some amount of soldiers goes in front of king, and king will go in the middle, and there will be some number of soldiers follow the king. So the main person is king, and this king's entourage is just to carry to just to take kings out safely. Mm. So king is always in the middle, and also they say, like, in the modern terms, it is like a sandwich model. In the sandwich, in the top there will be one slice of bread, and in the middle there is nice, tasty, crispy thing, and in the bottom there is one another bread. So there is not much taste in the bread unless this in the middle there is stuffing is there. So that way, but it is called the essence of Bhagavad Gita is in the middle 7 through 12 chapters, which describes about Bhakti Yoga process. And first 6 chapters describes about Karma Yoga. Second chapter 7 to 12, second section describes about Bhakti Yoga, and last 6 chapter describes about Jnana Yoga. So if we see the overall view of the first 6 chapters, in the first chapter, Arjuna observes the armies, and he gets overwhelmed seeing the relatives, friends, and other like who are related to him, like his Guru Dronacharya and his fathers, and maternal and fraternal relatives. And he observes them, and he gets overwhelmed with compassion. Am I going to kill my own relatives for the sake of kingdom? And he decided not to fight. And at that point of time, like Dhritarashtra becomes hopeful, and I'm not able to see myself.
We can see you, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, we can see Prabhuji.
Yes.
Okay. So Arjuna accept. So Arjuna decide not to fight, because he what he feels is, if I'm going to win the war means killing my own relatives, so I'm losing my relatives, and if I lose the war means I'm going to die and I'm going to lose my life. Or it is not concerned mainly about his life, because he's very much confident that he's going to win because of his expertise, and because of presence of Krishna on his side. He's sure that he will win, but still he only sees the hopelessness in this war, because he's going to kill his relatives, or if he loses, then he's going to lose himself, or he's the warriors on his side means his brothers. So he says, what is the use of this war? Even if I wins, I have to share the kingdom with my own relatives, and I have to show up. That's what gives great pleasure. So that there is no hope there. So he only sees lose-lose situation, and then he gives up. He says to Krishna that I'm not going to fight, and Arjuna gives 5 reasons why not to fight. So after when Sanjay narrates this, Dhritarashtra becomes hopeful. Dhritarashtra thinks, oh, if Arjuna is the main warrior on that side, if he doesn't fight, then Pandavas will easily get defeated, and my sons will not lose the kingdom. So he becomes hopeful. But Sanjay again goes forward and describes how Krishna motivated him. So in the second chapter, Arjuna accepts Krishna as his guru, and Krishna describes Jnana Yoga and the knowledge of body and the soul, and Sakama Karma, and doing the duties, Buddhi Yoga. So basically, second chapter is a summary of Bhagavad Gita. It means the essence of Bhagavad Gita in a crispy manner. So he describes everything, and then ask Krishna, like, how the doing this war is more beneficial than giving up this war, and how you should be, sthitadhira means some equanimous, He should be like, he should maintain his composure during this no, turbulent situations. So, and then he gives the qualities of the Sthitadhira, means the equanimous person. And Krishna tells at the end of second chapter to Arjuna, like these things, like giving up your duty or thinking for your own good, means he's not thinking in terms of what is dharma and what is adharma. He's only thinking what is beneficial and what beneficial for my enjoyment. So that is a kind of abominable thing. So Krishna advised Arjuna to keep away all these abominable things far distance by the knowledge of Buddhi Yoga. So then so when Krishna says that, Arjuna asks Krishna, which of the two, the renunciation or the action, means the karma, which is better? Because life can be perfected by through renunciation or by through karma. So which is better? So for that, in the third chapter, Krishna explains Arjuna how to perform karma, how to perform how different types of karmas are there. Niskama karma yoga and sakama karma yoga. So how niskama karma yoga is better, and but because Arjuna is questioning between karma and renunciation, right? Action or renunciation. So, but how premature renunciation is dangerous, that he explains in the third chapter. So at the end of the third chapter, Krishna describes about how to perform one's own duty. What is the obstacle? Is the lust. Lust is the formidable enemy and in the path of yoga. So Krishna says, conquer this lust by spiritual intelligence. For that, he gives buddhi, means Krishna gives the transcendental knowledge by which one can conquer the lust. So that will come under the fourth chapter. Fourth chapter deals with the transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge is the knowledge which is given by Krishna in the disciplic succession, and it is divine in nature. Krishna's appearance is how just by knowing about Krishna's appearance and activities are not ordinary. How by engaging in how one can attain by gaining this knowledge, one can attain perfection of life. So for that to happen, one has to approach a bona fide guru. That's what Krishna says in the fourth chapter. After that, at the end of the fourth chapter, Krishna spoke about attaining peace of mind by jnana, means the knowledge and the renunciation. And renouncing the karma kanda. But Arjuna asks again, previously Arjuna asked which is better, either renunciation or action, or karma is better. Krishna says about jnana, and then finally say, and now Arjuna is confused because Krishna is saying renunciation and jnana and renunciation and karma, but Krishna is asking me to fight this war, but at the same time he is saying jnana is better. Just by being attaining jnana, you will be peaceful. So Arjuna was, even though Krishna's words are not equivocal, but Arjuna, just in order to get more clarification, he asks which is better. Arjuna asks that about is renunciation or action, which is better. So Krishna says renunciation or nishkama karma yoga, which is better. So among nishkama karma yoga and sakama karma yoga, nishkama karma yoga is better. But among nishkama karma yoga and renunciation, Krishna says both of them are good. Krishna says both of them are equally equal, but karma yoga is easier, because without for one to have attain perfection in renunciation, he has to have a lot of mental and physical strength. The process of renunciation is not so easy, but nishkama karma yoga is much more easier, and one can attain perfection easily in that process. So just by focusing on Supreme Personality of Godhead, and for that one can attain liberation by focusing on the supreme through Nishkama Karma Yoga. And Ashtanga Yoga and Bhakti Yoga gives liberation. And again, at the end of 5th chapter, Krishna says, Krishna mentioned about Ashtanga Yoga. Now you can also through the process of renunciation, you have to achieve perfection through Ashtanga Yoga. But if you want to perform Sakama Karma Yoga, then you have to he explains Sakama Karma Yoga later. So he first explains what is Ashtanga Yoga or Dhyana Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga means attaining the perfection by meditation. So Dhyana Yoga aims at Paramatma realization. So Ashtanga Yoga has various practice, and it is perfection to realize the super soul. So in this yoga process, for Ashtanga Yoga process, one has to control mind. And Arjuna asked about how he can control mind and everything like that. And but at the like Krishna explains about different yoga process. Right? Until now, he explained about karma yoga, and then he explains about jnana yoga, and after that he explains about dhyana yoga, and finally in the second chapter itself he gives little bit hint of bhakti yoga. But after explaining about dhyana yoga briefly, then Krishna says, among the all yogis, one who knows me in truth is the best among the yogis. So then he finally says, Bhakti yogi is the highest. He is the most elevated among all the yogis. So then Krishna starts explaining the process of Bhakti yoga from 7th chapter. So that's how these first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita flows. I mean, like the conversation between Arjuna and Krishna flows through. So now we just briefly go through all the chapters of Bhagavad Gita, starting from first chapter. You're able to follow, right, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So in the beginning, Dhritarashtra inquires, and Dhritarashtra, being partial to his own sons, inquires what his sons and Pandavas did in the battle of Kurukshetra. No, just some devotees say two parties went to war, and what do you expect? Why why Dhritarashtra is asking such a silly question? They went to do war, and they will do war. Why did they ask? Means because he says they give different reasons, because this war is happening in Kurukshetra, and Kurukshetra is a holy place. Because of the presence of holy place, and these Pandavas are by nature pious, so that this by the effect of this holy place they may change their minds, and then in order to avoid the unnecessary bloodshed they may give up the war. So the first verse start like Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yussava mamaka pandava chaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. So it is like Kurukshetra is compared as like a paddy field, and Lord is uprooting all the weeds. That is compared in this scenario. So why Dhritarashtra inquired? Just doubtful of victory. He is doubtful, like if there is any changes in the battlefield, or due to influence of the holy place. And then Sanjaya said, working after looking the armies arranged in the formation, Pandu, the sons of Pandu, the Duryodhana went to his teacher. Duryodhana, after seeing the Pandavas army arranged nicely, he gets a little bit doubtful of his victory. So he goes to his teacher, because the commander on the other side is Drishtadyumna. Drishtadyumna is a disciple of Dronacharya. It is said that Drishtadyumna was born to kill Dronacharya, but still Dronacharya taught all the military uh, military science to Drishtadyumna without any partiality. So in order to point out his fault, and in order to just to cover up his anxiety, so Sanjaya goes to Dronacharya and says how what a mistake he did, informed about the strength of, he goes to Dronacharya and he informs about the strength of the Pandavas, and he also informs about his own army, and he enlists all the great warriors who is present in the on the side of the Pandavas, and also he tells about the all great warriors present on the side of the Kauravas, and comes to the conclusion that our strength is much more than Pandavas. And because what no, in calculating this military strength, like this Duryodhana, he never even considered the presence of Krishna, because since Krishna said that he is not going to take up the weapon in the battlefield, so it's used as just to Krishna's presence makes no difference. That's what is conclusion. So in the same way, in our daily struggle also in this material life, Krishna is present in our own heart as like Paramatma. And Krishna is watching. Krishna is present on the devotee side. What devotees bring Krishna and keeps in the on the chariot of their hearts, and Krishna directs the heart of the devotees, and Krishna is the main center in the life of devotees. But a person like Duryodhana, he never considered that Krishna is there on that side, because he only calculates this, they have this many Maharathis, this many Atirathis, and they have this many Akshavanis of army. But he did not consider they have Krishna on that side, who is the main factor of influence, who is the main controller, who is the Parameshwara. So similarly in the life of devotees, when you see that devotee, we should not see externals. We should see internally how he is how much elevated he is in the process of bhakti, how much he is surrendered to Krishna, how much he is serving Krishna nicely. So because Krishna is for sure will reciprocate with the devotee and make all his endeavors fruitful. So that is the mentality of non-devotees is nicely presented here in Bhagavad Gita. So after that, Duryodhana describes, and after Duryodhana describes his armies, then just in order, when Duryodhana praises Bhishma and Drona, Bhishma he just give pleasure to Duryodhana, he blows the conch, and in response the Pandavas also blows their conch on from the other side. So it is said that there's some signs of victories from the Pandavas side. When the Kauravas blow the conch, no Pandavas don't feel anything. But when Pandavas blow the conches, that it is said, Sanjay himself says that it is shattered the hearts of the Kauravas. This is the first sign, means they are going to lose. Just when the death is near, you will have some signs. So this is one of the signs. So at that point of time, when the conches are blown, when the war is about to begin, Arjuna develops a desire that he wants to see the parties on the opposite side. So he desired to see the supporters of Duryodhana. Arjuna asked Krishna to take chariot in between the armies. So seeing different kinds of relatives and friends and overwhelmed with compassion, he becomes overwhelmed with compassion. Then he starts thinking how if this war is going to helpful or not, like that. So Arjuna gives 5 reasons. This first chapter of Bhagavad Gita is divided like this. First 1 to 27, first verse to 27 verse. This is the preparation of war and signs of victory of the Pandavas. And Krishna is a Bhakta Vatsala. Why Bhakta Vatsala? Because Krishna is driving the chariot of his devotee, and he is accepting the orders of his devotee. When Arjuna says, "Oh Partha, please take my chariot in the middle of the armies," he says, he agrees and takes it. Means it's a Krishna being the supreme personality of Godhead. He becomes the chariot driver of his devotees. This is the nature of Krishna. So after that, when Arjuna, after seeing the enemies, Arjuna gives 5 reasons. Arjuna gets depressed. First of all, he develops compassion on his relatives. I'm going to kill my own relatives. And then after this compassion, that will give rise to different mental concoctions, no? And he's seeing no enjoyment in the victory. He says, even if I'm going to win, I'm not going to share my the result of my victory with my relatives, because all my relatives will be dead in this war. So what is the point of this war? And he also sees that it is sinful, because as a Kshatriya, when there is some adharma, he has to fight. No, actually, in the Vedic culture, the dharmic principles are laid down such that, like, there are dharma should be followed in every aspect of the life. So, but there is higher dharmas and lower dharmas. Higher dharma is to maintain the dharma as per the Guru, Shastra, Sadhu, and Shastra, and lower dharma is there are always higher dharmas and lower dharmas, but as much as possible we have to see that all the principles of dharma, both higher and lower, are followed. But when we come to a point where, in order for the higher dharma uh, to be uh, to be carried on, the lower dharma has to be compromised. So here Arjuna is saying that he is going to kill his own relatives, who are like Bhishma, Drona, who are like worthy of his worship. So as per etiquette, the elder shouldn't be always respected, and they should not be like they should not be mistreated by the juniors. But here, since they are on the side of the adharma, so this, in order to establish dharma in the kingdom, they all the opposite parties has to be destroyed. So Arjuna doesn't take that into consideration. He fears the sinful reaction, and he also says about destruction of family tradition, because all the male person are dying, so there will be nobody to protect their women, and there a good chance that women get polluted like that. And also indecision, and he was not sure like which is right and which is wrong. So these are the 5 reasons. And finally Arjuna decided not to fight, giving all these 5 reasons. So Arjuna has one Arjuna is described as Gudakesha, means who conquered the sleep, who conquered the ignorance, but still he was kept in ignorance just by the will of the Lord, so that he can give this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita for the benefit of everybody. So, and also it is the nature of devotees to be soft-hearted, and and but this soft-heartedness should not be the result of should not give rise to the false compassion. False compassion means like who should know when to show compassion and when not to show compassion. And also so there is more elaborate description here, so we'll go forward. And Arjuna gives all these 5 reasons, like we already discussed all these 5 reasons, so I'm not going to go in depth of these 5 reasons. So after that, Prabhupada and Acharyas describe the saintly qualities of Arjuna, because Arjuna is soft-heartedness and does not want to kill even the exchange of worldly pleasures, and ready to forgive his aggressors. So, and considers evil consequences also. He considers about himself, he considers about his relatives, he considers about society, he considers about dharma. He is taking all the factors into consideration, but a devotee should have that nature, because a devotee should be watchful of its thoughts, watchful of his actions, easy performing right or wrong at every point of time. Otherwise, he may not progress very much in the devotional service also, or even a non-devotee or any person, if anybody has to do anything, they should be constantly watchful how they are doing, and how they are thinking, and what their actions are leading to. So Prabhupada says Arjuna has all these great qualities and his soft-heartedness. That's why he is able to receive the knowledge of self-realization through Krishna. So at the end of first chapter, Arjuna gives up, and then in the beginning of second chapter, Arjuna was indecisive, and he expresses his concern, like I am not sure which is right and which is wrong. As per, because I came prepared thinking that it is a right thing. I came prepared for the war thinking that it is a right thing to do. But right now I'm little confused what is right and what is wrong. So he accepts Krishna as Guru. mm, and accept Krishna as Guru and advise him, please instruct me, and direct me and guide me in the right path. So what Krishna does is he chastises Arjuna in the beginning, as a as a friend and as a guru, he chastises, and after that in the 4 to 6 verses, Arjuna further puts his few more questions, and then finally Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. So so basically here Arjuna is showing the compassion towards the dress of a soul, like compassion towards the dress means compassion towards the material body of the opposite party, but not the uh, spiritual position. So Sanjaya says that seeing Arjuna in this condition, Krishna smilingly says, says about the knowledge of soul. How like excuse me. Yeah, like Krishna says that how the self Pandita Samadarshina means the Panditas doesn't who do not lament unnecessarily. They do not worry for the living or dead, because Panditas see that everybody as a spirit soul, but not as a material body, and no, he does not lament for the dead means because he knows that the person who died is going to get a new body, and he does not lament for the living because living persons means if that great soul is going to like just like a Bhishma and Drona, they are panditas, and they do not lament that oh I'm passing away, what is the situation of my like my dependents, if I'm not there, what will happen, like that. They do not worry for the person who is dead or who is alive. So Krishna chastises Arjuna, how come these impurities come upon you? And then so here Prabhupada also says that like how in Bhagavad Gita, whenever Krishna speaks, Vyasdeva writes Sri Bhagavan Vacha. He does not write as Sri Krishna Vacha. So Krishna is Bhagavan himself, and he describes about 3 features of Bhagavan. Vadanti tattva sattvam jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdate. Means the same Krishna, the Bhagavan, he is expanded into 3 features. He they are like Bhagavan means the original supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, and Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. So Bhagavan is the original supreme personality of Godhead, and Paramatma is the super soul within our hearts, and Brahman is the all pervading nature of supreme personality of Godhead. So and also other scriptures like in Brahma Samhita it says Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadi Radir Govinda Sarva Karna Karna, means Krishna is the cause of all causes. Even both he is the support for both material and spiritual worlds, and also how all the different in Srimad Bhagavatam, after when Vyasdeva writes like different incarnations of the supreme personality of Godhead, he enlists all the incarnations starting from Matsya Avatar, Kurma Avatar, and everything. And finally, after writing all those things, he writes this shloka in first canto, 3rd chapter, 28th verse. He says, Etecha kalapumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swami. So all these incarnations are coming from Krishna, who is the Swayam Bhagavan. So so Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. It's not like he is not an incarnation, he is not an expansion. So he is the original supreme person. And so that's what Prabhupada writes. And after that, when after hearing to Arjuna, Krishna starts speaking, how about the to Arjuna. Krishna says, Anarya Jushyam means like whatever you are thinking is Anarya means Arya means somebody who follows the Vedic injunctions. Anarya means who does not follow the Vedic injunctions. So Krishna is chastising Arjuna, saying that you are your thoughts are uncivilized. No, for a pious person, they may be very uh, what do you call very much logically correct. But Krishna is saying that Krishna is pointing out Arjuna is like a fool, and he says about scientific divisions of society, varnashrama dharma, and also he says who is superior, dealing with superiors, and Arjuna's another reason is not to fight. So and also Arjuna Krishna says about how to know the truth, how by approaching a spiritual master, and who is a guru means who is a tattvadarshi. So who has seen the truth, so you have to approach a guru and then get the truth from him. So right now Arjuna cannot leave the battlefield and approach a guru. So right now Krishna is in front of him, so he accepted Krishna as a guru and getting instructions from him. So after that Krishna explains different topics, and then Krishna speaks about jnana, because Arjuna's first question was he is going to lose all his relatives. So that's why he says that Krishna says to Arjuna, how everyone who is present there is not their material body. So there is a spirit soul behind the material body, and the qualities of a spirit soul, which is eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. And he describes the nature of soul, how a soul can never be killed, never dies. He always changes the body. And he explains how a dhira is not bewildered by the change. Like just like a Krishna explains, just like a boy who when a child is when a person is born, he grows through different changes, Kaumaram, Yavanam, Jara. But at that death, he changes the total body. So just like one is not bewildered just when a person changes a dress and comes in a new dress, in the same way, we should not be bewildered by this change. So the sober persons or dhiras are not bewildered by the change of these external dresses. So, and also Krishna explains the qualities of a pandita, how panditas will not think about what to be not, no? They will not think about this, they will not worry about these inevitable facts of life and death, or change of bodies, or they are only focused on what is my dharma, what is to be done and what not to be done, like that. So here Krishna further explains how everyone, including the kings on the other side, including his enemies, are always present. Soul is always present. The soul never dies and soul never take birth. Only soul takes up a body and gives up the body. So in the same way, like just a Kaumaram Yavanam Jara means like the infancy and then boyhood and then manhood and then finally old age, and then a person goes through all these stages in life. In the same way, at the time of death, the soul goes through the change of taking up a new body. So one should tolerate these changes, without getting disturbed. Just like one tolerate the severities of winter and summer season. So in the same way, one should tolerate the changes of these bodies without getting disturbed. And after that, Krishna briefly explains about sakama karma, performing the prescribed duties. Right now, Arjuna is about to give up his prescribed duty. As a Kshatriya, his prescribed duty is to fight. So, by avoiding this fight, like Krishna says to Arjuna, by avoiding, like just by fighting, you will attain the perfection of your life. If you win, you'll have a kingdom. But if you lose, you're promoted to heavenly planets because of performing your prescribed duties. But by avoiding this fight, he is going to incur sin and if an infamy and criticism. No? And it is a it will benefit, the fight will benefit, no, like it is like in the beginning we saw, right, how Arjuna is seeing only, lose situation, but Krishna is saying it's a win-win situation. Because if it gets defeat, he's going to get promoted to the heavenly planets, but if he wins the war, he's going to get a kingdom. So it's a win-win situation. And Krishna refutes all the arguments of Arjuna, like one by one, and saying, and how the material happiness comes through the proper execution of one's own dharma, and neglect of one's own dharma means downfall in this material world. So duty of Kshatriyas are there, it's not required. And then after that, first he convinces Arjuna to perform action, and then he educates Arjuna how to perform action. Means perform action without attaching to the results. Niskama karma yoga or buddhi yoga, detached work without the reactions. So that by performing the actions without attachment to the results, one will be freed from the reactions of the work. Just like in the, we know, right, in this material world, for every action there is equal and opposite reaction. For every karma, there is a reaction. So, but if one performs Nishkama Karma Yoga, then one will not have this reaction. So, Krishna encourages Arjuna to dutifully fight with equanimity. That will result no sin. And also he gives the knowledge, intelligence, this jnana, buddhi yoga. So, by performing your actions, by following the injunctions of the scriptures, and by knowledge, you're not going to lose anything in this world. And also about Nishkama Karma Yoga and benefits of performing the actions with knowledge. And how he says that like, Neha Bikramana Swasti means like just even a little bit of endeavor in the right path will protect the person from the greatest danger. Like just like even like it is said that how even a little bit of endeavor in the path of bhakti, one will be protected from the greatest dangers. Like Prabhupada says, even if a person touches his book, or even if in his lifetime honors prasadam once, he is guaranteed of getting a human body next life. So that is the greatest benefit. So just like there are many materialistic examples how the great warriors of Alexander, they won the entire world, like not entire world, like major part of the world, but still they lost their soul. Means they came with nothing and they went with nothing. Unlike these material results, the spiritual results are guaranteed from life after life. The uh, spiritual advancement is never lost. So Krishna encourages Arjuna to also take up the process of bhakti, and he also uh, explains about the, let us see this, Vyavasayatmika buddhi means like how should be one should be focused, no? Just like a chetaka bird, like we know about chetaka bird, right? It only drinks the water that is dropped from the cloud. It won't drink the water from the ground, it only drinks the water on the cloud. In the same way, a devotee or Krishna conscious person will only release the Krishna conscious activities. He only performs all his activities only for the pleasure of Krishna. That way he has no obligation, means no like in the materialistic terms, like every person have runas, right? Like so we are indebted to forefathers, sages, to the nation, everything.
Yes,
But
Prabhuji.
a Krishna conscious devotee is 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 not indebted to anybody, but he actually he and he actually, but at this he when he pleases Krishna, he is pleasing everybody. Just like by watering the roots of a plant, one is serving the entire plant, all the branches, all the leaves of the tree. In the same way, just by carrying on the duties towards Krishna, one is carrying the responsibilities towards all the entire creation. Like he is grateful to all this everybody. He is fulfilling all the duties of towards his fathers, forefathers, towards the nation, towards everybody, towards his family. Hmm? So bhakti yoga is so nice. And also, and in the process of bhakti, one should, you know, always follow the injunctions of sadhu, guru, and shastra. And by pleasing guru, one easily pleases Krishna. Understand the purpose of Vedas, Bhageshwara. Vedas speak only three modes. So, but the Vedic knowledge, Krishna derides the Vedic knowledge also. Like Vedas only speaks about three modes. You know, how to get whatever you desire. You know, like performing different sacrifices. Actually, the Vedic knowledge is kept in such a way that the person who is materially motivated, he takes up the Vedic injunctions and starts acting in the Vedic ways just to fulfill his materialistic desires. And over period of time, after getting the results and after enjoying the results, he realizes there is no ultimate pleasure in that materialistic benedictions. So he finally, you know, when he he develops a renunciation. When he develops renunciation, he will take up the process of pure bhakti, and he acts only on the platform of jnana, and then attains the perfection through bhakti. So Krishna is also contracting about, you know, Arjuna's reasons about not fighting. Krishna explained that acting in devotional service means just by acting, performing your duty in devotional service, it will free you from all the sins. There is no and lead him to the place beyond the misery. Means like he when he performs dutifully, when he performs his duty in this world, he attains perfection in this world, and at the same time he will be promoted to the better destinations in the next life also. So at the end of the after that, Krishna says the qualities of Sthitadhira, means who is uh, who is rightly situated in this material world. So he explained the qualities of Sthitadhira. Arjuna, like Krishna says that Pandita Samadarshina, like that he says, right? So uh, when Arjuna hears this, Arjuna asks the question, what are the symptoms of this Sthita Prajna, or Dhira or Pandita, who is equanimous? How does he walk? How does he see it? Like that means there is a implied meanings for that. So Arjuna asks 4 questions about the Sthita Prajna. So in response to this question, Krishna answers in like no Sita Prajna, how does Sita Prajna responds to dualities. Now how does Sita Prajna, a equanimous person, a perfect person, a perfect person is also called as Jivan Mukta, because he is living in this present, like it is said that, right, we attain mukti after the death. But when it comes to this perfect persons, they are liberated even though while they are living in this material world. Means even though they are embodied, even though they are still having the body, but still they are liberated due to by their knowledge, by the discriminatory power. So this Sita, they are called Sita Prajnas. So uh, Arjuna asks him, and the Sita Krishna responds, how a perfect person responses to the dualities of life, and how does he see it, means how does he control his senses, and how does he speak, and how does he walk, means how does he engage his senses. So Krishna explains the general symptoms, how does he speak, how does he sit, and how does he walk. So for that, Krishna says he gives up his symptoms. How do you recognize a Sthita Prajna? Hmm? He gives up all the material desires of sense gratification born of mental concoction. So somebody should like Sthita Prajna is someone who is not running after material sense desires, and thus purified of mind, and one finds satisfaction in self alone. If you see, there are some some head of the spiritual departments who are always engaged in sense gratificatory things. Mm. So Krishna is clearly saying that he is a cheater. Mm. A Sthita Prajna will never hanker for this material sense enjoyment, sense gratification. Material sense gratification in this world is a mental concoction. It is not true at all, because the more you engage yourself in sense gratification, the more your senses demand, and the more you will get into anxiety. So that's why like it is called mental concoction. So a Sthita Prajna will not engage in this kind of activities. And also how does he sit, means how does one give up all the material desires, means he does not give up them artificially. So basically, first question enti what are the general symptoms, means how can we recognize a Sthita Prajna? Just by one who is not after the sense enjoyment, or was not after the sense gratification, who is running behind the who is not running behind the sense objects, is called Sthita Prajna. And the second question is, how does he speak? He speak means how does he engage? How does one give up all material desires? Like sorry, it is related to the first question only. He like just we realize Sthita Prajna by seeing that he is not engaged in the sense gratificatory thing. And how does he give up the sense gratification? By it's not artificially, but by completely engaging Krishna consciousness as is eternal servant. Just like that is through Yukta Vairagya. You're following, right? Am I too fast or too slow?
No, Prabhuji, we are following, Prabhuji.
Okay. And next question is, what is next question? How does he speak? How does one find satisfaction in the self alone? By self-realization, by realizing eternal servitorship towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He has no sense desire for petty materialism. So that self-controlled person, he realizes his servitorship towards the towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he has no sense desire for petty materialism. And just like a person who has already taken food, he will not hanker for food. If a hungry person may hanker for food, but not a person who is fully satisfied. So in the same way, a Sthita Prajna will be fully satisfied with his Krishna conscious activities. So we, by being busy ourselves in Krishna conscious activities, we will be able to satisfy our hankering, and then we will no more hanker for the sense gratificatory things. And second question, how does he speak? How does he speak means how the intelligence and the words respond to the affliction, anger, and neutrality. Means how does he respond to, like, we now speak means what does he speak? How does he react for respond to affection, anger, and neutrality? No, like the response to affection is a favorable, and anger means unfavorable, no, unfavorable, and neutrality means neutral situation where it is not so favorable and not so unfavorable. So how does that person who is a Sthita Prajna will react to these three kind of situations? So here Krishna is saying equipoised in happiness and distress, and he free from all the attachment, fear, and anger, because favorable situations are happiness and distress. No, favorable when he is not very much too much elated when the happy situations come, or too much depressed when a unfavorable situation comes, and unaffected by the good and evil, and firmly fixed in the perfect knowledge. And he knows the temporary nature of this material world, and he is firmly fixed in his process of devotion to Krishna, and he always sees opportunity to engage himself, and he sees Krishna's hand in every situation of life. So that way he is perfectly situated in the knowledge. And how Krishna conscious person is equal, because he accepts everything as Krishna's mercy, either favorable situation or unfavorable situation. The Sthita Prajna, that perfect person, he actually sees everything, both favorable and unfavorable persons, as Krishna's mercy. So free from attachment and anger, he is free from all attachment and anger, because he is always daring and active and fixed in service to Lord. So basically he is active in devotional service, and he is free from no attachment or aversion, and unaffected by good and evil. That person that is not affected by good or evil. And also, like, how does he walk means the third question, how does he sit means how does he control his senses? He control his senses. For this, Krishna gives the example of the tortoise. Just like tortoise, it leads his normal life, but whenever any danger comes, he actually goes into the shell. In the same way, this perfect person, what he does is he carry on his duties, but any situation which is not favorable for his devotional service, he comes across any situation like that, he immediately pulls back his senses from the sense objects, and then he situated in the self alone. He is so that he doesn't get entangled in the sense gratificatory activities. So this is the, like, test for a yogi or a devotee or a self-realized soul is he able to control his senses? Is he able to tolerate the provoking situation? So that way one can without falling down progress in process of devotional service, just by just by having the higher taste, one can easily get rid of the lower taste, just by engaging ourselves in the higher engagement, just by having the experience of higher taste, we'll have the experience, we'll have no taste in the lower lower taste. The same way, in order to what you call, not to fall trap for the mundane sense gratificatory things, we have to experience the taste in Krishna consciousness. That is the higher taste. Taste in the material things is like taste in the dead material, because dead material is already is a material because a material thing is a dead material, either a living body or or any material object, anything. So, but Krishna consciousness is the actually spiritual and it is eternal. And Krishna also explains at the end of this chapter how this fall down happens. No, just by contemplating first, we see the sense object, and then we we get attached to the sense objects, and then we develop through the attachment. Lust will develop. Lust means only attached to the sense object, and he does not want to give that sense object. So, but if that sense object is taken away, then one will develop this anger. So due to the anger, one develops delusion, means he will lose his intelligence. He lose of intelligence means he will not, he will no more, he will have the discriminatory power what to do and what not to do, what is favorable and what is not favorable, what is temporary and what is eternal, what is favorable for his devotional service and what is not favorable. So he will lose the discrimination, and then after losing the discrimination, this memory is lost. Why memory is bewildered means all our experiences are present in the are coming from the memory that we have. Because of the memory only, we will remember, like if for suppose if we touch a fire, we burn our hands, and we will remember, oh, if I touch the fire, it will burn my hand. It will be stored in the memory. And so that next time when we see the fire, we'll be careful not to touch it. So, but if the memory is lost, that person will keep on repeating the same things again and again, and keep on tries to get pleasure from the same sense object again and again, and then he will not, and by doing so, he will not be able to do the endeavor, or he will not be able to put effort to know something higher beyond the sense gratificatory thing. So when person loses his, when the person's memory is bewildered, his intelligence is lost, and due to the loss of intelligence, he falls into the material pool. Means again he falls into repeated births and deaths, janma mrityu jara vyadhi, adhyatmika adhibhautika adhidevika kleshas. Everything repeats again and again and again. So this is the cycle of suffering. How a person suffers due to the, this entire thing starts out of due to the one thing that is called being attached to the sense object. Okay, so we should be careful, like just like Krishna explains, how one should always pull the senses immediately when we see the sense object, that will distract. So the same thing, like objects of sense gratification will lead to attachment, and due to attachment will develop lust, and due to this lust comes anger. Why? Because when the object of sense gratification is taken away from that, because we are attached to that and we are lusty towards that object of sense gratification, we develop anger. We want that object of sense gratification with us only. So this anger will lead to delusion, means confusion, and due to this confusion we lose the memory, and then loss of memory leads to loss of intelligence and lead to fall down. So senses are naturally active. So if you don't senses are naturally active means senses are always looking for the something to engage in. So if you don't give something positive to senses, they will automatically get engaged themselves in something negative. So we should always engage ourselves, performing Krishna conscious activities. Performing Krishna conscious activities will not we will protect ourselves by the pull of our sense gratificatory things. This is a nice example of Haridas Thakur, how he, when a prostitute came to make him fall down, he actually was able to, he through like for 3 days that only Haridas Thakur and that prostitute were there, and Haridas Thakur didn't even get agitated by the prostitute, and because in a lonely night only one lady. So he actually because his senses are always continuously chanting the holy name of Krishna, and finally what is the result? Not only Haridas Thakur fell down, he made that prostitute into a devotee. and that prostitute becomes a great devotee of Krishna. So that is the effect of engaging our senses constantly in Krishna's service. So the secret of success is in terms of sense control, how much we are controlled, how much we are, how can we be able to have a good control of our senses just by engaging our senses in Krishna conscious activities. So that, and also being by being away from the sense objects which tempts us towards sense enjoyment. So the self-realized person is free from attachment and aversion. He does not hate the sense object. He is only he does not somebody, if like some devotees say that, right, like some brahmacharis, they actually speak heavy against the women, but Maharaj says women are not uh, not the problem. The problem is your lusty desires. So the sense object are not, is not only women, anything like sense object, anything that is that is bewildering our senses. The sense object itself is not the problem, because when we have the higher engagement, then our senses uh, can be controlled just by placing Krishna in our on our Krishna service. Just by engaging all our senses in Krishna service, we can be easily able to control our senses, and that way, just by Lord's mercy, we can achieve the perfection. So this is a chapter. This is the like second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and we'll start third chapter, and we'll be able to finish the all now 4 chapters next session, because second chapter is a very lengthy and very important what you call very important chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So we have to do this. You have any questions or comments?
Prabhuji, like that's what Prabhuji, you told, like, always engage in Krishna consciousness, and then we can control our senses. But desires, Prabhuji, especially in like in a grahastha ashrama, okay, suppose like if a kid is there, and people like they expect their kid to study in a good school, and good things, and all those desires comes Prabhuji, like they expect a good lifestyle and all those things. So once that desire comes, and they cannot be fully like engaged into Krishna consciousness, Prabhuji.
No, Prabhu,
Right.
everything can be engaged in Krishna conscious, Krishna service, Prabhu. Because when we see this example of devotee, kid care, taking care of kid, yes, that has to be taken care, because a grihastha should take care of the kids as if it is Krishna's kid, not as his kid. And Krishna has kept this kid in his service. So he has to give best of what he can give, and then he has to give Krishna conscious knowledge to the kid also. So that way you have to see Krishna's service and Krishna's we have to engage ourselves. We have to dovetail all our activities in Krishna service. You understand what I'm saying, right? So in Grihastha also, when when you go out and work, no, it's not my answer, it is answer from senior devotees, that what I heard. When a Grihastha goes out and work, you should be thinking that Krishna, I'm maintaining Krishna in my house. Krishna is there in my house. Like Krishna is there, and when he sees out, he should see that it is not my house, it is Krishna's house. And just I'm the servant of Krishna, I'm going to go and earn money just to maintain Krishna's house. And then when you go out for shopping, you have to always think what is good for Krishna, what you can offer for Krishna, what you cannot offer. And when you come home and you offer to Krishna, you engage in Krishna service, you know, and you discuss about Krishna in your home, and you engage all your you encourage all your family members to take up to Krishna service, and perform Krishna Katha at your home. And that way your all the activities of Grihastha ashram will be centered around Krishna and Krishna conscious activities. That way there will be no more attachment.
So Prabhuji, like this is this is like I understood, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, in that case, like, Krishna has given the Varnashrama, no, Prabhuji, like Brahmacharya, then Grihasthashrama, then Vanaprastha, and finally Sannyasa.
Yeah.
Okay, so then who will, I mean, like in this Kali Yuga, Prabhuji, like that is not feasible, no, or like, who will take up that follow that Varnashrama?
Varnashrama is there, Prabhu, right now, but Varnashrama is not fully established. So whatever the facility we have, we can engage everything in Krishna service. That's it. There you should not think for perfect Brahmana, perfect Kshatriya. They are not there in this Kali Yuga. But whatever we
So
have,
Varnashrama is applicable only in Kali Yuga, Prabhuji.
no, Varnashrama is applicable in every Yuga. Varnashrama is like social structure, like for the it is given by Krishna himself, because there are Brahmanas, the intellectual people in every aspect of the in every society. Either you take in a school, college, or in your office, there will be some people who are more Brahmanical, and there will be some people more Kshatriya nature, and there will be some people who are more kind of Vaishya nature, and there are some people who are more kind of Sudra nature. These qualities of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra can be discussed later, but they are there because it is the word of Creator, because Creator has created that personalities in such a way. So what is your question about this Varnashram system? Because it is already there. You don't have to, no, you just have to identify who you are, and you just engage that self in a perfectly. Krishna does not say only Brahmanas will go to, only Brahmanas can become a devotee. No, it doesn't say. Krishna says anybody can become a devotee.
So rather than following Varnashrama, just simple ways like Bhakti Yoga process through which you can always be in a Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, see. You may follow Krishna Varnashrama Dharma. All the Varnas and all the ashramas should engage in Krishna's bhakti. That is most important thing. There is, see, Varnashrama Dharma is more of materialistic, and bhakti is more of spiritual.
Okay.
So when you are following spiritual dharma, it doesn't mean that you have to give up your material dharma. You should try your best to you should try your best to fulfill your material dharma also. But if you have to decide between material dharma and spiritual dharma, you have to give first preference to spiritual dharma. After then, that way you can be able to perfect your life in this lifetime and also in the next lifetimes also. And finally, you can go back to Godhead.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes.
Okay, Prabhu.
Understood, Prabhuji. Yeah. Understood, Prabhuji.
We'll end it here. Thank you for joining. So next time onwards, yes, Prabhu, Chapan.
Yeah. Can you share these slides, Prabhuji? This looks very overview and then quick to glance.
Yeah,
and I'm not yet done, Prabhu. So once I'm done, I will share it.
Yes. Sure, Prabhuji. Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji. This is like we understood pretty good, Prabhuji, in this these slides. Okay, first how the Bhagavad Gita is divided, and what it in each division, what it states, and all it's it's clearly by reading itself we can understand the